I received the call while brewing coffee. My sister Mira, who works as an airline pilot, came through the speaker with an unusually urgent tone. "I need to ask you something odd." "Is your husband home right now?" she inquired. I glanced over at Mason, who was curled up on the couch with the morning paper. "Yes," I replied. "He's in the living room." A silence fell that made my skin crawl. Then Mira whispered, her words cutting through the apartment, "That can't be true, because I'm watching him with another woman right now. They just boarded my flight to Paris." At that very moment, the apartment door clicked open, and I heard footsteps behind me. Mason entered the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, smiling with that familiar expression he'd had for 7 years. The mug he held was the one I had given him for his 40th birthday, white ceramic with "the world's most adequate husband" printed in black. He had laughed when he unwrapped it, saying it was perfect since he never trusted anyone who claimed to be the best at anything. That was 3 years ago, back when his self-deprecating humor felt endearing rather than calculated. "Who's calling so early?" Mason asked, moving toward the coffee maker for a refill. His Saturday morning routine was always the same: coffee, Financial Times, a light breakfast, and then his squash game at the athletic club by 11 o'clock. I tightened my grip on the phone. Myra's breathing was audible through the speaker. She was waiting for me to respond, to react, to make sense of the impossible. My husband stood just 5 feet away from me in our kitchen, yet he was also apparently sitting in business class at JFK Airport with another woman. "Just Lynn," I managed to say, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "Pre-flight check-in." Mason nodded absent-mindedly, pouring coffee with his left hand while scrolling through his phone with his right. Amara said hello. Maybe we'll finally take her up on those flight benefits she's always offering. Before we proceed, I want to express my gratitude for your attention to these tales of betrayal and resilience. If you believe that everyone is entitled to honesty in their relationships, please think about subscribing. It aids us in reaching others who may benefit from these narratives. Now, let's explore how this deceit unfolds. The irony in his words made my stomach churn. I observed him navigate our kitchen with the comfortable ease of someone who truly belonged there. 7 years of marriage had established these routines. Where we stored the sugar. How he preferred his coffee, the way he always opted to stand at the counter instead of sitting at the breakfast bar. "Lynn, I'll call you back," I said softly. "Ava, hold on. I need to share something with you." Her voice held the same urgency it had 3 years ago when she called about Dad's heart attack. That call had also come on a Tuesday morning. I had been in this very kitchen preparing breakfast when my world shifted dramatically. "I'll call you back," I reiterated and ended the call. Mason looked up from his phone. "Is everything okay? You seem pale." "Do I?" I caught a glimpse of myself in the microwave door. The same auburn hair tied back in a ponytail. The same green eyes my father had bestowed upon me. The same face that had greeted me every morning for 37 years. But Myra's words had altered something essential. The kitchen felt different now. Like when you realize a picture frame has been asking you for months. "Just tired," I replied, reaching for my coffee mug. My hands were steady. 2 decades of working as a forensic accountant had trained me to keep my composure when realizing that nothing was as it appeared. Sayo had sat across from me, deceitfully lying about missing millions, while I nodded, took notes, and collected evidence. "You should return to bed," Mason suggested, his British accent enveloping the words with a familiar warmth. That accent had captivated me at a mutual friend's dinner party 8 years ago. He had been detailing the distinctions between rugby and American football, animatedly waving a glass of wine, which he accidentally splashed onto my dress. His embarrassment was quite charming. Or was it? "Perhaps I will," I remarked, examining his expression. The same sharp jawline, the same green eyes flecked with gold, the same tiny scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood bike mishap. Every aspect was just as it should be. My phone vibrated. A message from Lynn. Check this out now. A picture popped up. Through an airplane window, I could glimpse the business class interior. There, in seat 3B, was a man clad in a blue Tom Ford suit. The photo was taken from a certain angle, but the profile was unmistakable. The way he tilted his head, the contour of his jaw, the specific manner in which he gestured while conversing. Mason, my Mason. He was animatedly chatting with a blonde woman who appeared to be around 25, her hand casually resting on his forearm. I glanced back at the Mason in our kitchen, wearing a gray cashmere sweater, reading glasses pushed back into his hair, that same wedding band on his left hand that we had selected together at a quaint jeweler in Soho. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, I think I'll whip up some pancakes. Pancakes? He arched an eyebrow. On a Tuesday? What's the special occasion? The occasion was that my sister was observing my husband on a plane while my husband stood right there in our kitchen. And one of these realities had to be a fabrication. But I couldn't voice that. Not yet. Not until I grasped what was unfolding. Can't a wife prepare pancakes for her husband without needing a justification? He smiled. That specific half-smile that used to make my heart race. Of course, but you know I have squash at 11. Plenty of time, I replied, retrieving ingredients from the pantry. Flour, eggs, milk. Simple items that made sense. Unlike the image on my phone depicting my husband in two places simultaneously. As I poured flour into a bowl, I reflected on the minor discrepancies I had overlooked in recent months. The night he returned from a client dinner, smelling of a perfume I didn't recognize. The credit card statements loaded at a sluggish pace each month, unveiling a pattern that caused my chest to tighten. There it was, a charge at the Tokyo Mandarin Oriental from March 15th to 18th. I can vividly recall that weekend. Mason had supposedly driven to Connecticut to assist his mother in reorganizing her garage following his father's death. I had offered to accompany him, but he insisted I remain home and recuperate after a particularly exhausting audit. The hotel charge indicated 2 guests, room service for 2, and spa treatments for 2. My hands quivered slightly as I scrolled down further. Goodbye. The Four Seasons. A weekend when he claimed to be attending client dinners in Midtown. I had been home suffering from food poisoning, too ill to question why his client meetings necessitated overnight stays at hotels just 40 minutes from our apartment. Next, I pulled up his business credit card. More hotels, more restaurants I had never heard him mention, and jewelry purchases from Cartier that had never turned into gifts for me. My analytical mind, trained to detect financial discrepancies, catalogued each irregularity while my heart attempted to rationalize them. Perhaps they were client gifts. Maybe the hotels were for visiting executives. Perhaps there was a reason that didn't involve my husband leading a completely separate life. Suddenly, my phone rang. Layla Chen's name flashed on the screen. I'm 15 minutes away, she said without any preamble. And Ava, you need to brace yourself. What I found is extensive. Layla and I had been roommates at NYU, both pursuing accounting before our paths diverged. Mine led to forensic investigation, while hers took a turn toward what she cryptically referred to as private intelligence. Her divorce from Richard, the Wall Street trader who had been involved with his 23-year-old assistant, had transformed her from a corporate analyst into someone who specialized in what she termed marital reconnaissance. While I waited for her, I continued my investigation. Our joint investment accounts displayed regular activity. However, when I probed deeper, I uncovered withdrawals that I didn't recognize. Initially, there were small withdrawals, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, always just under the limit that would set off automatic alerts. It was the kind of systematic siphoning I had witnessed in numerous fraud cases, but this time it was occurring within my own accounts. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Layla was at the door, dressed in her usual all-black outfit, tablet held tightly against her chest, her face serious. She had worn that same expression when she found out about Richard's affair, and when she had to inform me of my father's hidden gambling debts after his passing, moments when life demanded unvarnished truth between friends. "Show me," I urged, guiding her to the dining room table. She opened her tablet, her fingers moving swiftly across the screen with practiced ease. "The woman your sister saw him with is Madison Vale. She's 26 years old and works as a pharmaceutical sales representative for Silex Industries." A photo appeared on the screen. Madison was blonde, conventionally attractive in a way that hinted at costly upkeep. She has been covering the Manhattan territory for 2 years. Her social media is mostly private, but I managed to find some tagged photos. The subsequent images made my stomach drop. Madison and Mason at a restaurant I didn't recognize. Madison and Mason at what appeared to be a hotel bar in Miami. Madison and Mason at a charity gala, the same night I had been in Boston for a conference. "How long?" My voice sounded detached, as if someone else were asking. "Based on the digital evidence, at least 3 months. But Ava, that's not the most bizarre part." Layla pulled up another screen. "I accessed your building's security footage through a contact. Take a look at this." The video displayed our apartment building's lobby from last Tuesday. Mason was seen entering at 6:47 p.m., briefcase in hand. The timestamp corresponded with when he had returned home from work. Everything appeared normal until Layla zoomed in. "Watch his shadow," she instructed. The shadow fell at an incorrect angle, flickering slightly as he passed beneath the chandelier. These were details that would go unnoticed by a casual observer but were glaringly obvious to someone searching for deceit. "This technology is known as deep fake," Layla clarified. "Someone has been embedding fake footage into your building's security system. This isn't the work of amateurs. We're dealing with advanced software that requires an investment of hundreds of thousands of dollars to set up correctly." I gazed at the screen, my mind racing to comprehend the implications. Why would anyone go to such extremes? That's the question we need to answer. But there's additional information. She opened another file. "I had a discreet conversation with a few of your neighbors. Mrs. Patterson from 20C shared something intriguing. At 78 years old, she lives alone with her 2 Persian cats and spends most of her time observing the hallway through her peephole, acting as the building's unofficial security. She recalled seeing Mason leave with suitcases 3 months ago, during the weekend you attended that conference in Boston. She remembered it clearly because he assisted her with her groceries as he left, mentioning he was going away for a while. I recalled that weekend vividly. The conference had been mandatory, filled with 2 days of tedious presentations on new SEC regulations. I returned home Sunday evening to find Mason preparing dinner, rosemary chicken, my favorite dish. He claimed he had spent the weekend organizing his home office and catching up on sleep. The office looked exactly the same. "But I came home and he was here," I said, feeling the weight of the words in my throat. Was he really? Or was it someone who merely resembled him? The room seemed to sway slightly. I clutched the edge of the table, my accountant's mind attempting to impose order where there was none. "This is absurd. People don't just get swapped out." "No," Layla concurred, her tone both gentle and resolute. "They do not. Not without considerable resources and careful planning." "Ava, has Mason been involved in any sensitive matters? Any deals or projects that could potentially make him a target?" I reflected on his recent assignments, mergers, acquisitions, the typical activities of investment banking. Nothing appeared to warrant such an intricate deception, unless there was something he had kept from me. Another secret to add to the ever-growing collection. "I need to see more footage," I stated, my voice now more composed. "Every entry and exit from the last 3 months, credit card statements, phone logs, everything." Layla nodded, already typing away. "I'll gather what I can, but Ava, you must be cautious. Whoever is behind this, whether it's Mason or someone else, they have put in significant resources. This isn't just a minor issue. This is something entirely different. Layla departed after handing me an encrypted phone for communication, cautioning me to maintain normalcy until we grasped the complete picture of what was unfolding. I spent the remainder of the afternoon in a state of limbo, tidying up things that didn't require tidying, organizing files that were already in order. Anything to keep my hands occupied while my mind raced through increasingly absurd possibilities. At 5:30, I heard Mason's key turning in the lock. The man who might not actually be Mason. The stranger who had been residing in my home, sharing my bed, playing the part of my husband with such accuracy that I had never questioned it until now. I composed my expression into something that resembled calm and began preparing dinner. "Something smells amazing," he called out, just like always. The routine was so ingrained it felt like muscle memory. I decided to whip up shrimp scampi, a recipe from my grandmother in Naples. The garlic and white wine sauce permeated the apartment with its rich scent. This particular dish held special meaning in our relationship. The real Mason had a severe allergy to shellfish, documented by 3 trips to the emergency room over the years. His medical alert bracelet had been worn religiously for 7 years, specifically listing shellfish as life-threatening. "Your favorite," I said, placing the plate in front of him. My voice came out normal, even pleasant. 2 decades of keeping my composure during fraud investigations had taught me how to compartmentalize panic. He gazed at the dish with what seemed to be genuine pleasure. "You haven't made this in ages." That was indeed true. I hadn't prepared it because my husband would suffer if he consumed it. Yet, this man picked up his fork without a moment's pause, expertly twirling the linguine and savoring a shrimp as it reached his lips. No signs of distress, no swelling, no frantic search for an EpiPen, just a man relishing his meal. "This is amazing," he remarked, taking another mouthful. "Your grandmother would be proud." My grandmother had passed away 15 years ago, but she would have been appalled to witness me serving shellfish to someone I was evaluating like a lab specimen. I observed him eat, noting every movement, every look, searching for any flaws in his act. "So, I was thinking," I said, refilling his wine glass with the composed demeanor of someone chatting about the weather. "We should visit your mother this weekend." The Real Mason would have quickly concocted an excuse. His relationship with his mother was at best complicated, at worst toxic. She had never approved of me and had never forgiven him for marrying outside their social class. Our trips to Connecticut were meticulously planned, often requiring weeks of discussions. "That sounds lovely," he responded without hesitation. "She'll be excited to see us." Excited. His mother had never been excited about anything related to me. I sensed my phone recording from its spot behind the fruit bowl, capturing this dialogue that would later serve as proof of what? That my husband had been supplanted by someone who genuinely appreciated his mother. "We could stay the entire weekend," I pressed further. "Help her with that gardening project she mentioned." "Perfect. I'll call her after dinner to inform her." The real Mason would prefer to undergo dental surgery without anesthesia than spend a weekend doing manual labor for his mother. This man was failing every test yet excelling at being a superior version of my husband. After dinner, we settled onto the couch for our typical evening routine. Netflix, light conversation about our days, the comfortable silence of a long married couple. Nothing about this felt comfortable anymore. Every gesture he made, every word he uttered felt like observing a master puppeteer skillfully manipulating unseen strings. "I'm so tired," I declared at 10, stretching dramatically. "That audit today really drained me." "You put in too much effort," he remarked, kissing my forehead. His lips were warm, the pressure familiar yet somehow unsettling in an indescribable way. In our bedroom, I changed into my pajamas while he brushed his teeth. The sounds from the bathroom were just right. The electric toothbrush buzzing for exactly 2 minutes, the gargle of mouthwash, the routine of washing his face. It was as if someone had studied my husband's habits with anthropological accuracy. When he slid into bed next to me, I forced myself to stay still. He turned onto his side, facing away from me, and his breathing evened out within moments. The Real Mason was a chronic insomniac who typically read until well past midnight. This man fell asleep like someone free of worries, secrets, or the burden of a stolen identity weighing on his conscience. I waited, counting his breaths, until I was sure he was sound asleep. Then, I quietly slipped out of bed, moving as if I were defusing a bomb. His briefcase rested in its usual place beside the dresser, the leather softened from years of use. The real Mason's briefcase, now in the hands of an imposter. At first glance, the usual contents seemed normal: a laptop, various files, business cards. But beneath a pile of investment portfolios, I discovered an envelope that seemed out of place. My fingers shook as I pulled out its contents. A pay stub made out to Damien Webb, an address in Queens. An actors' union card. But the most incriminating were the handwritten notes, pages upon pages in someone else's handwriting chronicling my life in painful detail. My morning routine, right down to my preferred coffee mug. My speech patterns, with certain phrases highlighted. Details about our relationship history that read like a script prepared for an audition. Ava likes her coffee with 1 sugar, no cream. She contacts her sister every Tuesday and Thursday. The anniversary falls on October 15th. She anticipates receiving flowers but feigns indifference. Her father passed away 3 years ago, a delicate topic. She gets emotional during the final scene of Casablanca every single time. Our whole marriage summarized in bullet points. A character analysis for someone gearing up to portray a devoted husband. At the end of the last page, there's a note in a different handwriting. 3 months at most. Keep the cover until the transfer is finalized. 3 months. This act had a deadline. I returned the documents to Damien's briefcase with shaky hands, my mind racing with the implications of the transfer being complete. Transfer of what? Our assets. The apartment. My whole existence. I took pictures of each page using the encrypted phone Layla had provided, then quietly returned to bed where the stranger with my husband's face lay sleeping soundly. The following morning, Sunday, I observed Damien as he went through his morning routine with a fresh perspective. Every action was deliberate, every word meticulously chosen. When he mentioned needing to hit the gym, I concocted an urgent client emergency that demanded his immediate attention at my office. He hardly glanced up from his tablet, waving goodbye with the absent-mindedness of someone whose thoughts were already elsewhere. My office building was deserted on Sunday morning, just security personnel and the echoes of financial misdeeds. I locked myself in my corner office overlooking Park Avenue and opened my laptop with the resolve of someone about to perform surgery on their own life. The forensic accounting software I typically use to uncover corporate fraud would now analyze my personal finances. I began with our joint checking account. The last 3 months unveiled a pattern so discreet I would have overlooked it if I hadn't been specifically searching for theft. Transfers of $9,999, just under the federal reporting limit, moving to accounts I didn't recognize. The receiving banks were located in the Caymans, infamous for their privacy regulations and resistance to international scrutiny. Every transfer was authorized using my husband's credentials while Damien sat across from me at dinner or slept next to me in bed. The Real Mason was elsewhere, methodically draining our accounts while his hired lookalike kept me occupied with flawless portrayals of domestic happiness. I followed the money through 3 shell companies, each registered in different jurisdictions, leading to yet another dead end. Lux Corp International in the Caymans, Meridian Holdings in Panama, Apex Investments in Cyprus. Corporate frameworks crafted to launder money and conceal assets from individuals like me. The trail went cold at Swiss banks, renowned for their privacy laws. 15 years of savings, investments, and meticulous financial planning evaporated into numbered accounts that I could see but not access. The magnitude of the theft made me feel physically ill. $400,000 from our investment portfolio. $600,000 from the home equity line we had never utilized. An additional $300,000 from various retirement accounts, all taken as loans that wouldn't trigger immediate alerts. $1.3 million systematically siphoned off while I lay next to a stranger who had memorized my coffee preferences. But the money was only the beginning. When I accessed my professional client database, I discovered something even more alarming. Login records indicated access from unfamiliar IP addresses. Downloads of sensitive financial data from 3 significant corporate audits I had conducted. Information that, in the wrong hands, could enable insider trading worth tens of millions. I pulled up Madison Vale's professional profile. The pharmaceutical sales representative now seemed like a mere facade. Her LinkedIn revealed connections to several hedge fund managers, the type who operated in legal gray areas and were indifferent about the origins of their information. Her travel history on social media perfectly aligned with suspicious trades in pharmaceutical stocks that occurred just before major FDA announcements. They were not just stealing from me. They exploited my reputation, my access, and my client connections to engage in federal offenses. Each unauthorized login, every pilfered file, and every questionable trade would lead back to my credentials. If discovered, I wouldn't just face financial loss, I would risk losing my license, my career, and possibly my freedom. I required assistance that went beyond what Layla could offer. Grace Morrison picked up on the third ring, her voice hoarse from sleep. We had been friends since her days as an ambitious prosecutor while I was serving as an expert witness in fraud cases. Her divorce from a judge who had accepted bribes had ended her career at the DA's office but had sharpened her insight into how the system failed women who uncovered their husbands' criminal activities. Ava, it's 7 a.m. on Sunday. I need your help. Can you meet me at my office? Something in my tone must have signaled the urgency. 20 minutes, she replied before hanging up. Grace arrived looking as if she had hastily thrown on the first outfit she could find. Her prosecutorial instincts remained sharp despite 3 years in private practice. I laid everything out for her, the financial transactions, the stolen client information, the images of Damien's briefcase contents. She examined the evidence with the intense focus that had once made defense attorneys uneasy. This is sophisticated, she finally remarked. It was a professional-grade identity theft intertwined with financial fraud and corporate espionage. But here's your dilemma. Everything is technically authorized. Your husband's credentials were utilized, his biometrics, his passwords, without any proof that he wasn't actually present during these transactions. You're facing a he said, she said scenario. But I possess evidence that Damien Webb has been impersonating him. An actor who could assert he was hired for a legitimate purpose. Perhaps Mason intended to surprise you. Maybe it was research for something. Without Mason here to refute that narrative, and with him likely prepared to deny everything from wherever he is hiding, the authorities won't act swiftly enough. By the time they look into it, the money will have vanished and the evidence will be gone. My phone buzzed. Not my usual phone, but the encrypted one that Layla had given me. I had tucked it away in my desk drawer. The notification revealed a new message on an unfamiliar app. Grace leaned in as I opened it. A single text from an unknown sender. Check Mason's old phone. I glanced at Grace. Who else is aware of this? Someone who wants you to uncover something, she replied. This feels like a trail of breadcrumbs. We drove back to my apartment together. Damien was still at the gym, his Sunday routine as predictable as clockwork. I headed straight to Mason's home office, to the desk drawer where he stored old electronics he claimed he was recycling but never actually got rid of. His old iPhone was there. The screen was cracked from when he dropped it getting out of a taxi 6 months ago. I pressed the power button, not expecting anything. The screen flickered on. 5% battery, but it was alive. The phone had been receiving messages for months while supposedly broken. I opened the messages with trembling fingers. There was a conversation with Madison Vale dating back 8 months. Plans, photos, and details that sent chills down my spine. The wife suspects nothing. Mason had written 3 months ago. Damien is perfect. By the time she figures it out, we'll be untouchable. The latest message was from yesterday. Tomorrow, we finalize everything. Our usual spot in Paris, then disappear forever. Grace stared at the phone screen, her prosecutor's mind already constructing the case. Tomorrow is Monday. If they plan to finalize everything, we must act tonight. I felt a shift within me. The fear and confusion solidifying into cold determination. The same focus that had helped me unravel million-dollar fraud schemes would now safeguard what was left of my life. I handed Grace the phone and approached my laptop with renewed purpose. "What are you doing?" Grace asked, setting a trap. Mason may have taken my money, but he overlooked the fact that I know how to trace it. My fingers danced over the keyboard, crafting something stunning in its simplicity. A financial virus masquerading as ordinary investment documents that would show up in our shared cloud storage. The code was sleek, set to activate the moment anyone accessed our joint accounts from an international IP address. Once triggered, it would halt every transaction, secure all linked accounts, and simultaneously notify federal investigators of any suspicious activity. "Is that permissible?" Grace observed from behind me. "It's my own account. I'm safeguarding my assets from theft." "Absolutely legal." I embedded the virus in files titled Q3 Investment Review and Tax Documents 2024. Mason's arrogance would lead to his downfall. He always reviewed our investments before making significant decisions. A habit from his banking days that even crime couldn't shatter. The apartment door swung open. Damien returned from the gym, whistling a tuneless melody. Grace and I exchanged knowing looks. She instantly understood, slipping Mason's phone into her purse as I shut my laptop. Working on a Sunday again. Damien appeared in the doorway, gym bag slung over his shoulder, a sheen of sweat from his workout. "You really ought to take a break." "Just wrapping up," I replied, my voice calm. Grace stopped by to go over a case we're working on together. He nodded at Grace with practiced charm. "Great to see you. Will you join us for lunch?" "Actually," I said, rising to my feet. "I was thinking we could grab lunch at that spot in Atoria. You know, the one we visited after our honeymoon. They had that incredible grilled octopus." Damien's smile remained intact, but I noticed a flicker of panic in his eyes. We had never been to Atoria together. The real Mason and I had honeymooned in Santorini, not Greece as I had claimed. But Damien was unaware of that. "Atoria," he echoed, buying himself some time. "The little taverna where we danced until dawn. You said it was the most romantic night of your life." Grace observed our conversation like a tennis match, fully aware of the test I was conducting. Damien's jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. Finally, he spoke, though I suspected it was merely a facade to mask his ignorance, a complete fabrication. The location I mentioned was non-existent. I offered a warm smile, playing the role of the devoted wife while noting yet another flaw in his act. "You're likely correct. Let's just opt for Thai food instead." The visible relief in his shoulders was unmistakable. Grace took her leave, taking the evidence with her. As Damien went to shower, I made 3 phone calls that would ignite fires beneath Mason's meticulously crafted scheme. First, I called Thomas Whitaker, the CEO of Steinberg Industries and Mason's largest client. I maintained a conversational tone, expressing concern without sounding alarmed. "Thomas, I apologize for bothering you on a Sunday, but I noticed some unusual activity in your company's investment portfolio while reviewing related accounts. It's probably nothing serious, just a clerical error, but it might be wise to have your team investigate." The seed of doubt was planted, nurtured with just enough concern to prompt an internal audit that would uncover discrepancies linked to Mason's unauthorized access. The second call was to Jennifer Wu at Phoenix Capital. I used the same strategy, but with a different angle. There was a mysterious transfer that didn't align with their usual patterns. Quite odd, probably nothing, but worth a look. The third call went to David Martinez at Meridian Financial. By Monday morning, 3 major firms would be uncovering security breaches, all traced back to credentials associated with Mason Mercer. Just as I finished the third call, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed my mother's assisted living facility in New Jersey. My heart sank. Sunday afternoon calls typically indicated medical emergencies. Mrs. Chin, the voice on the line, belonged to Nancy, the facility director. Your mother is fine, but she's quite upset. She insists that someone is lying about your husband visiting her. I'll be there shortly. The drive to New Jersey took 90 minutes. Damien thought I was managing a crisis regarding my mother's medication. The facility was tucked away among trees that were just starting to turn golden. It was a serene environment for those in the twilight of their lives. My mother's room had a view of the garden, with photographs adorning every surface, making her memories feel real. Ava. She seized my hands as soon as I entered, her grip surprisingly strong for someone of 82. That woman is lying. I mentioned that Mason visited last month, but she insists there's no record of it. Nancy stood in the corner, looking remorseful. The visitor log doesn't show any entry, yet Mrs. Chin is convinced. My mother's dementia often made her an unreliable witness, but she occasionally had moments of remarkable clarity, particularly regarding recent happenings. Tell me about his visit, Mom. He came on a Thursday. I remember because it was pudding day. He inquired about your father's life insurance. Wanted to know if there were any other policies aside from the one you were aware of. I informed him about the Northwestern Mutual policy, the one your father never disclosed to you. Mason claimed he wanted to ensure you were safeguarded. My blood ran cold. There had been another policy, one I only found out about after Dad's passing. $500,000 that had been used to cover Mom's care. Very few people were aware of it. Did he ask about anything else? The safety deposit box. He wanted to know which bank held it and what was inside. I told him about your father's coin collection, the one he believed would be worth something someday. I kissed her forehead, assuring her I would return soon, and stepped into the hallway with Nancy. Check your security footage from last month. Every Thursday, Nancy accessed the files on her tablet. We sifted through weeks of recordings. Residents coming and going, families visiting, staff changes. Then we spotted him. August 15th, 2:47 p.m. Mason entering through the front door, signing the visitor log, spending 43 minutes with my mother. However, the log Nancy retrieved, the physical sign-in sheet, was photographed and archived. Mason's name was absent. The page displayed a void as if that line had been completely omitted. He signed it, Nancy remarked, perplexed. I observed him as he signed it. Someone had meticulously altered the archived image, erasing his signature with surgical accuracy, yet they had overlooked the security footage. Mason had been orchestrating this for months, amassing details about every asset, every policy, every conceivable source of funds. He had even targeted my mother, extracting financial information from her muddled memories. I drove back from New Jersey with New York's security footage stored on my phone. Another piece of evidence in the ever-growing pile of Mason's deceit. On that Sunday evening, traffic crawled, allowing me time to reflect on the calculated cruelty of visiting my mother, drawing financial details from a woman whose mind flickered between decades like a radio searching for signals. My phone vibrated with a message from Lynn. Her flight had touched down at Charles de Gaulle 3 hours earlier. The photos attached made my grip on the steering wheel tighten. Mason and Madison were at the airport currency exchange, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. Another image captured them entering a taxi, Madison leaning her head against his shoulder. They were both laughing at something on his phone. The timestamp read 4:47 p.m. Paris time. The next photo took my breath away for a moment. They were at the reception desk of the Hotel Lancaster on the Champs-Élysées, a place where rooms began at €800 per night. Madison was wearing a diamond bracelet I recognized. The one Mason had allegedly purchased for his mother's 70th birthday 6 months prior. The body language between them conveyed a familiarity that suggested years of comfort, not just months. The way she adjusted his collar, the way he led her through the lobby with a sense of ownership. This was not a new affair, this was a relationship that might have existed long before our marriage. I arrived at our building's garage at 8:30 to find Damien pacing near the elevator, his phone pressed to his ear. When he spotted me, his expression shifted to one of concern, though not quickly enough to mask the flicker of anxiety beneath. "There you are," he remarked, abruptly ending his call. I was starting to worry. "How's your mother?" "She's doing well, just a bit puzzled about some old financial papers." I observed him digest this information, noting the slight easing of his shoulders when I chose not to provide further details. Back in our apartment, I made a choice that could either reveal everything or jeopardize my pursuit of justice. Sitting across from Damien at our dining table, I casually pulled out my phone with intention. "I've been contemplating," I mentioned, scrolling through my calendar. "Our anniversary is approaching next month. 8 years since that dinner party where we first met." Damien nodded, his training as an actor keeping his face impassive, even though Mason and I had actually been married for 7 years, not 8. Another test failed. "I want to plan something special. A surprise party on Tuesday morning before the markets open. Invite all your colleagues from the firm, your top clients. Show them the apartment. Serve champagne and those delightful pastries from that French bakery you adore." His eyes showed a flicker of confusion. "Tuesday morning. That's an unusual time for a party. You always mentioned that the best deals happen before breakfast. Besides, it would be unforgettable. Unique." I opened my contacts, letting excitement infuse my voice. "I'll take care of everything. You just need to send out the invites tonight. Make it sound exclusive, urgent. Inform them that their attendance is crucial." Damien paused, clearly trying to determine if this was part of his role or something unforeseen. But declining would mean breaking character, and maintaining his facade was essential. "If that's what you wish," he finally replied. "Perfect. Send them now while I prepare dinner. I want to see their replies." I watched him type the message on his phone, his fingers hesitating as they moved across the screen. Investment banking associates, significant clients, individuals whose presence would be hard to justify when federal agents showed up. Within moments, replies began to pour in. A blend of confusion and consensus. "When Mason Mercer summoned you, you made sure to be there." As I prepared our final dinner together, an unexpected surge of compassion washed over me for Damien Webb. He was a failed actor from Queens who had believed he was landing a role, perhaps in a reality show or an elaborate joke. Instead, he found himself entangled in federal offenses. Caught in a performance where the consequences were prison terms, not negative reviews. I cooked salmon with asparagus. It was simple and quick. Damien sat at the kitchen island, upholding the facade of domestic normalcy while we both understood that something had irrevocably changed. The script he had memorized no longer aligned with the scene unfolding. "Wine?" I offered, lifting a bottle of the Malbec we typically enjoyed on Sunday evenings. He quickly shook his head. "I'm not feeling well. I think I might be coming down with something." For the first time in 3 months, he declined alcohol. His instincts were blaring alarms, even if his conscious mind hadn't fully grasped the peril. I poured myself a glass, needing the liquid courage for what lay ahead. "Damien," I said softly, and his entire body tensed. I never mistakenly called Mason by the wrong name. "I know who you are." The silence hung between us like a taut string. His expression shifted through various emotions: astonishment, fear, calculation, and ultimately acceptance. When he finally spoke, the British accent had vanished, replaced by a pure Brooklyn tone. "How long have you known?" "Since Tuesday morning. When my sister spotted the real Mason boarding a plane while you were in our living room." He buried his face in his hands, the gesture so authentically human that my anger flickered. "I was unaware of the crimes." "I mean, he mentioned that you were separated and needed someone to house sit, to maintain appearances for business purposes. He paid me $20,000 in cash to impersonate him for 3 months. I thought it was strange but legal." "Did you genuinely believe that?" "I wanted to." His voice wavered slightly. "I've been auditioning for 15 years, waiting tables, driving delivery trucks, watching younger actors land the roles I desired. Then this guy appears, offering me more money than I've ever encountered to take on a role. I didn't ask questions because I couldn't afford to." My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. "FBI is moving tomorrow morning. Everything is set." I glanced at Damien, this stranger who had slept in my bed, dined at my table, and participated in a deception that ruined my life. But as I looked at him now, noticing the defeat in his posture, I recognized another victim of Mason's manipulation. "Tomorrow morning, federal agents will arrive. The people you invited will be here to witness it. You can either be arrested as a co-conspirator or cooperate as a witness." "Witness," he replied instantly. "God, witness. I have documents, recordings." He insisted I keep everything in case you became suspicious. He said it was insurance. Damien spent the night on our couch after showing me a storage unit key where he had kept everything. Contracts, recordings of phone calls with Mason, detailed instructions for maintaining the ruse. We hardly slept, both of us anticipating the dawn that would conclude this elaborate act. At 5:47 a.m., my phone rang. "They got them," Lynn said, her voice filled with both exhaustion and satisfaction. "French police arrested them at Charles de Gaulle. They were attempting to board a connecting flight to Switzerland." I put her on speaker so Damien could hear. He sat up on the couch, the blanket I had given him wrapped around his waist, looking like a man about to receive his own verdict. "The arrest was dramatic," Lynn continued. "They were in the premium lounge when the police arrived. Madison burst into tears, insisting she was unaware of any crimes. Meanwhile, Mason's facade finally shattered. He attempted to flee, but they apprehended him right there in front of everyone. Someone captured it on video. It's already making rounds on European news channels." Damien shut his eyes, perhaps coming to terms with how close he had been to wearing those handcuffs himself. I made my way to the kitchen and started brewing coffee, my hand steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. Soon, the apartment would be filled with witnesses to the climax of Mason's deceit. By 7:30 a.m., the first guests began to arrive. Thomas Whitaker from Steinberg Industries appeared bewildered yet intrigued. Jennifer Wu from Phoenix Capital looked impeccable, even at this early hour. David Martinez, along with several junior partners from Mason's firm, and clients whose portfolios totaled billions in managed assets, gathered in our living room, accepting coffee and engaging in awkward small talk about the mysterious urgency of the invitation. "This better be worth it," Thomas remarked to Damien, who stood frozen by the window. I canceled a breakfast meeting with the Soul team. Panic was evident in Damien's eyes as he glanced at me. The script had not prepared him for this moment. I stepped forward, taking on the role of gracious hostess one last time. "Thank you all for coming. I realize the timing is unusual, but you'll soon understand why your presence is so crucial." At 7:58 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Multiple sets moving with determination. Damien noticed them too, his complexion turning ashen. The doorbell rang once, followed immediately by firm knocking. "Federal agents, we have a warrant." The room erupted in a flurry of confused whispers as I opened the door. 6 FBI agents entered, their presence instantly transforming our apartment from a social gathering into a crime scene. The lead agent, a woman with steel gray hair and observant eyes, displayed her credentials. Agent Sarah Brennan, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We're searching for Mason Mercer. That's me, Damien said, his Brooklyn accent seeping through the British facade. But that's not the case. I mean, he gazed at Agent Brennan with a look of desperate relief. I want to help. I have proof. I was hired to impersonate him. The room went quiet except for the sound of someone's coffee cup clattering against a saucer too forcefully. Thomas Whitaker's mouth opened and closed like a fish struggling for breath. Jennifer Wu took out her phone, likely assessing her firm's risk in light of the situation. Mr. Webb, Agent Brennan stated, clearly already aware of his true identity. You're being arrested for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. As they placed handcuffs on Damien, he glanced at me with what seemed like gratitude. The storage unit on Queens Boulevard, he quickly mentioned. Unit 447. Everything is there. While agents were reading Damien his rights, my laptop pinged with a notification I had been anticipating. The financial virus had been triggered. On my screen, I observed in real time as accounts across the Caymans, Switzerland, and Cyprus froze at once. $47 million in stolen assets locked in digital amber. Transaction records were automatically sent to federal prosecutors, the IRS, and the SEC. Every agency that Mason believed he had outsmarted now possessed a complete account of his offenses. Mrs. Mercer, Agent Brennan approached me while her team secured Damien. We will need you to accompany us for a formal statement. Certainly, but first, these individuals deserve to understand why they are present. I picked up my phone, locating the recording of Myra's call from Tuesday morning. Her voice resonated in the room, clear and professional. I need to ask you something unusual. Is your husband home right now? The recording played through those initial moments of realization. The assembled executives listened with increasing understanding, recognition dawning on their expressions. They were not here for an anniversary celebration. They were witnesses to the disintegration of a colossal fraud that could have jeopardized their companies. Your husband, Agent Brennan, spoke to the room while her team was busy, has been pilfering corporate secrets and enabling insider trading by leveraging information acquired through his wife's forensic accounting expertise. The individual you've been meeting with for the last 3 months was Mr. Webb, brought in to uphold the facade while the genuine Mason Mercer tried to escape with stolen assets. David Martinez slumped into our couch, assessing his firm's risk. Jennifer Wu was already on the line with her legal team, but Thomas Whitaker approached me, his face transitioning from shock to something resembling admiration. You figured it out. You orchestrated this. I nodded, suddenly feeling drained. He relied on me not to notice or to be unable to prove it if I did. The audit discrepancies you mentioned on Sunday were indeed valid. Your systems had been breached, but now the FBI possesses all the information necessary to trace precisely what was taken and how. Agent Brennan's phone vibrated. She picked it up, saying, "Listen," then glanced at me. French authorities have confirmed they have Mason Mercer and Madison Vale in custody. They will be extradited to face charges here. The apartment that once served as our home, our refuge, had transformed into a crime scene. Agents documented everything, gathered evidence, treating our shared life as exhibits in a federal investigation. The witnesses who had gathered gradually departed, each pausing to extend awkward condolences or bewildered thanks. As the final agent was about to leave, Agent Brennan handed me a card. We will need you to testify. Your forensic work, the virus you developed to trace the money, is the cornerstone of our case. I will be there, I replied, genuinely meaning it. The apartment fell into silence. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of Damien's last performance, his coffee cup still resting on the counter, the blanket he had used on the couch, the notes he had hidden throughout the apartment to help him remember his lines. Props in a play that had finally concluded. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Video from Charles de Gaulle, shaky yet clear. Mason, handcuffed and visibly shaken, was escorted through the airport as onlookers paused to gawk. Beside him, Madison's designer makeup was streaked with tears, her Parisian fantasy crumbling in the hands of the French police. I replayed the video once more before shutting my laptop. Mason's arrest unfolded in grainy airport footage that had somehow become the most viewed clip on financial news networks. The timestamp in the corner indicated it was 6 months ago, yet it felt like an eternity since that Tuesday morning when my life was torn apart. The apartment now stood vacant around me. Our furniture had been sold or given away, and the walls displayed pale patches where artwork used to hang. The movers had taken the last of the boxes yesterday, leaving only the remnants of a marriage that had felt more like a performance than a partnership. I gazed out the windows overlooking Manhattan, keys heavy in my grasp, waiting for the building manager who would take possession in 20 minutes. The divorce proceedings had progressed unusually quickly once federal prosecutors laid out their case. Mason's lawyer, operating from a French detention center while contesting extradition, had little ground to stand on against the evidence of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The judge, a woman seasoned in financial crimes, had shown little sympathy for a husband who had employed an actor to stand in for him while liquidating marital assets. The settlement granted me more than I had anticipated. The proceeds from the apartment sale recouped funds from the frozen accounts and damages that Mason's insurance company opted to pay rather than endure a public trial. While money couldn't restore the 3 months spent beside a stranger or the 7 years with a man capable of such betrayal, it could afford me the freedom to start anew. My phone buzzed with a reminder for a client appointment. The irony was not lost on me that my trauma had morphed into my area of expertise. The office space I had rented in the Flatiron district featured a simple brass nameplate. Chin Forensic Consulting specializes in marital asset protection and identity verification. What began as referrals through word of mouth has now expanded into a waiting list of women who believe their realities have been manipulated. Just last week, I assisted a surgeon from the Upper East Side in uncovering that her husband of 15 years had been utilizing deep fake technology to attend medical conferences while secretly operating a separate practice in Miami. The week prior, a Broadway producer discovered that her spouse had employed 3 different lookalikes to maintain alibis across various cities. Each case felt like peeling back layers of deceit using the same tools that had once saved my own life. The building manager arrived, accepting the keys with a professional demeanor. As I took the elevator down for the final time, my phone buzzed with a text from Lynn. Giovanni's at 7. My treat. Giovanni had remained unchanged for 40 years, still serving the same red sauce recipes that our grandmother had deemed the only acceptable Italian cuisine outside of Naples. The vinyl booths were still patched with duct tape, the checkered tablecloths bore decades of wine stains, and the owner's son still struggled to pronounce bruschetta correctly, despite being a third-generation Italian-American. Lynn was waiting at our usual corner booth, a bottle of Chianti already opened. She stood up when she spotted me, pulling me into a hug that lingered longer than necessary. We had grown closer through this ordeal, the shared trauma forging a bond that transcended sisterhood. "You did it," she said, pouring wine into glasses that seemed to have survived both world wars. "The apartment's really gone. I handed over the keys 20 minutes ago." I took a sip, the cheap wine reminiscent of childhood Sunday dinners. "Feels strange. 7 years erased in an afternoon." "Not erased, transformed," Lynn replied, raising her glass. To the woman who figured out her husband was in 2 places at once and dismantled an international fraud ring. To the pilot who made the phone call that saved my life, I countered. We valued the ritual more than the wine itself. Lynn had been burdened with guilt over that morning for months, believing she had ruined my marriage with a single phone call. I attempted to clarify that she had only unveiled the damage, not created it. However, survivor's guilt is not easily swayed by reason. I have something for you, she said, retrieving an envelope from her purse. It arrived at my building yesterday, addressed to you care of me. The return address was from Dayton, Ohio, written in Damian Webb's careful and precise handwriting. I opened it slowly, uncertain if I wanted to hear from the man who had taken over my life for 3 months. Dear Ava, the letter began. I wanted to reach out now that the legal matters are resolved. First, thank you for not pursuing further charges. The FBI had enough evidence without your testimony to grant me probation and community service instead of prison time. I'm now teaching acting classes at a community college here, finally putting my skills to honest use. I share with my students the story of those 3 months, how the best performance of my life was also the worst thing I've ever done. Some roles, I tell them, aren't worth playing, no matter the compensation. I think of you sometimes, wondering how someone heals from what Mason did. Then I read about your new firm and the women you're helping, and I realize you've transformed poison into medicine. That's a strength I never knew existed. The storage unit contained one item I didn't disclose to the FBI, a photo from your wedding that was included in Mason's instruction packet. You appeared genuinely happy. I regret being part of taking that from you. I hope that one day you find something real to fill the void left by what was stolen. With sincere regret and genuine admiration, Damian Webb. Inside the letter was the photograph of Mason and me cutting our wedding cake, both of us laughing at something out of frame. I examined my younger self, trying to recall what had been amusing enough to elicit such pure joy. The memory eluded me. He genuinely appears remorseful, Lynn noted as she peered over my shoulder. In his own way, he was also a victim. Mason ruined numerous lives in his pursuit of money that is now held in federal custody. I placed the photo back into the envelope. Damian simply had the bad luck of being desperate enough to accept the role. We ordered our usual pasta arrabbiata for me, and linguine vongole for Lynn, accompanied by enough garlic bread to raise a cardiologist's eyebrows. The familiar tastes felt like home, a sense of continuity in a life that had been entirely reimagined. What's next? Lynn inquired, twirling her pasta with practiced skill. Rebecca Harrison tomorrow. She's the CEO of a tech startup. She suspects her husband might be using AI to fabricate business trips. Then on Thursday, the Whitman case. I meant for you, not the work you. I pondered the question, allowing it to linger between us like another guest at dinner. 6 months ago, I believed my future was laid out in comfortable predictability. Now, at 37, I find myself single, thriving in a field I created, and completely uncertain about everything except my next client meeting. I don't know, I confessed, surprising myself with my honesty. And that's strangely liberating. If this tale of calculated revenge kept you engaged until the very end, hit that like button right now. My favorite moment was when Ava served Mason his beloved shrimp scampi, fully aware of his severe allergy, and watched the imposter consume it without any reaction. What was your most shocking moment? Share it in the comments below. Don't miss out on more captivating stories of betrayal and justice. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.